Hi everyone. I'm just checking to see if everybody can hear me. Let me know if you can, and hopefully we can get going. This is going to be a live revision session, kind of Q&A session on paper 3, civil rights in the USA. Or generally if people are doing paper 3 on something else and just want some kind of tips on exam technique. Can you just let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay? If there's any issues with the sound, I'll just wait to hear if anybody's out there. Amazing. Thank you, Henry. Great. So before we get started, I'm pretty good. I hope you're all doing well. I was just going to ask before we get started, how is paper 1 and paper 2 gone for everybody? Does anybody want to say how it's been going? I've had some feedback from some people on paper 1. The Stuart Britton paper, I think, was pretty good. Anybody want to add that? How's paper 2 gone for folks? Is it? Yeah. Pretty good. Some of them saying it's a bit harder. All right. So pretty good overall. Nothing too bad. Yeah, hopefully finish on a high. Paper 2 better than expected. That's good to hear, George. Amazing. So let's get going then with this. I've got a presentation this time. I'm trying to make it a little bit better every time I do these live streams. So I've got can I bank on not revising geography? That's a great question. I'm not really the one to answer that, but I'd have a go at have a look at some past questions or something. So I've got a presentation, and it's nothing too drastic. It's got the specification, it's got a breakdown of the past paper. The questions have come up in the past, so I'll go through that in a minute. But just fire away with questions, what you're keen to hear, and then I'll kind of get into it a little bit. In terms of the specification and just breaking it down and kind of what hasn't ever come up on the specification. So I'll talk about that. And then the breakdown of the past questions. And I'll talk about what hasn't come up or what hasn't come up for a while, maybe to make sure that you're kind of on it in terms of things that could come up this time. The main thing, if you haven't already, is to go through all the past paper questions. Make sure you've planned all the past paper questions before the exam. That's the best revision to do. Okay, some questions are coming in, but keep on asking the questions, and then I'll start going through this presentation in just a minute. So will fiction film always come up? It always has done, Henry. So it's likely that it's going to it doesn't specifically say that it has to every time, but I think it's pretty safe to assume that it's going to come up every time. So yeah, I think you can always assume it's going to come up. I think it would be a big surprise to a lot of people if it didn't come up. So I think you can always assume that's going to come up. Let's have a look. Next one. Will there always be time to ask tips on source questions? Struggling to make a balanced answer. So the main thing to say about the source question is just to follow that structure, where you do paragraph 1 on inquiry 1, paragraph 2 on inquiry 2, paragraph 3 on provenance. Or you could even do provenance as paragraph 1, and then paragraph 2 on inquiry 1, paragraph 3 on inquiry 2. For source questions, remember the examiners are looking for 3 things. So inferences, using own knowledge to make judgments on the content of the source, and then evaluation of source provenance. So make sure that you do that. In terms of a balanced answer, I would say just aim to make the same number of inferences for each inquiry. So my suggestion is always 3 inferences per inquiry that then you use your own knowledge to kind of support or challenge. So that's what I would say. In terms of the source question. I hope that helps, but I've done a video on the source technique for this, so check it out if you haven't seen that. But let me know if you need some more tips on source questions. So Samuel, or Sam, has asked this question on which is a was that a past question? Um, on the New Deal topic. So it's maybe a kind of practice question, but it's an classic kind of obstacle question for topic 3, the New Deal topic. So the key focus of that question is influence of Southern whites in the Democrat Party, the chief cause of failure to address grievances. So you've got to think about what were the other obstacles to the advancement of civil rights in that time period. So you could talk about white attitudes generally. You could talk about kind of FDR and the limitations of the New Deal, perhaps. That then you would obviously link those two things to the influence of Southern whites. Also, the Supreme Court at that time actually didn't really advance civil rights. I think actually that is in one of the past paper walkthroughs that I did. It's in a video that I've done. So have a go at that. So yeah, have a look at that. I hope that's okay. So somebody's asked on prediction. So I'm going to go through that in just a minute once I've answered a few questions. So I hope that's okay. Let's have a look. Good to see you, Liv. So the Obama's policies in run for the Senate. In terms of Obama's policies, that's a good question. It's very specific. Please, if anybody's got anything, fire away. My understanding is that it's kind of pretty standard democratic policies, because it was the kind of things that he did. He was against voter ID. I remember that. It was to kind of he was critical of some policing policies, and those kind of things. Let me have a think about that. Policies for the run for the US Senate. If anybody else can remember any, that's a good question. That's really a tricky one. Let's have a look. So I can't be more specific there, Liv. Hopefully that's okay. Gives you some ideas. Can poll tests and literature tests be classified as Jim Crow laws? I would actually say that you probably could talk about them as the wider, the wider kind of Jim Crow time period and the limitations. Specifically, you're talking about poll tests and literacy tests. I think they can be specifically linked to obviously political rights. So I think you could say, the way that Jim Crow laws played out politically was through poll tests and literacy tests. So I think you could put them as a broader summary of kind of Jim Crow period. Definitely, Luce. It's a good question. I hope that's okay. Let's have a look. So we've got another question from Liv on the push factors in altering geographical distribution. Yeah, so the push factors in the later period from 1950, really it's moving away from the kind of ghetto issues in the north and the de facto segregation. And you could actually link to the kind of riots like Detroit, Newark, Watts, LA riots of 1992, another one. So they are the push factors, aren't they? Why the Rust Belt and the kind of deindustrialization of the north, in comparison to the Sun Belt in the south. That's what I would say. So I hope that's okay. Let me know if there's anything else that you're kind of thinking of for that. But good question. Will the alphabet? Hi, Morvin. Let's have a look here. Will the alphabet agencies come up? They still confuse you. They could do. The New Deal came up last year, which we'll look at in just a minute. It could do. I've actually done a video specifically on the alphabet agencies. So if you have a look for it, it's like going through all the alphabet agencies and talking about the impact on civil rights. I think I'd be surprised if it came up. But it could. Let's have a look. So statistics, Lucy, it's a good question on statistics. How I think you've just got to, I wouldn't get bogged down by statistics, but particularly for something like the change in geography question, I think some statistics on the numbers in terms of how many Black Americans were moving, from the south to the north and things like that. Some statistics perhaps on voting figures as well. There's some statistics, isn't there, on the impact of the voting qualifications and things like that in topic 2, perhaps as well. That would be so. I wouldn't get bogged down too much, but it's useful to know some of the kind of key ones. What else? will I do such revision sessions next year? Dimitro, I hope that's okay pronunciation. Probably, probably. I would. Yeah, thank you. I'm pleased the video's been helpful. Probably, I'll probably do something. And Sparkle Unicorn again, bringing the knowledge, just like in the paper one session on Obama. So some good knowledge there. So have a look at that. I think it was Liv who asked that question. So have a look at those responses there from Sparkle Unicorn. Amazing. Can there be two questions on geography or portrayals, or will it always be one of each? In the specification, it doesn't say there has to be one of each, but I think it's highly, highly, highly unlikely you're going to get two on geography or two on fiction and film. I would revise everything. If that's why you're asking it, I'd always revise everything. You don't want to kind of come unstuck. But I would be very surprised if they did two of the same. They could do, so be prepared. But I wouldn't get kind of worked up about it. I think it's likely all the past papers have been one of each. So I don't think, I think there would be kind of outcry, I think, if there was two of the same. So yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about it, but I would revise everything for sure. Definitely revise everything. What's Lucas saying? What would you say economic evidence for this question to accent? So for that question, so this question on this idea of status, kind of Black American kind of status and second class citizens in this Jim Crow period, the biggest thing you could say for economic rights is sharecropping and the continuation of sharecropping. So I would say what you need to do for the exam is have some kind of knowledge on sharecropping. I think there are some kind of statistics. It goes back to Lucy's question on statistics, maybe getting some statistics on the amount of Black Americans who were sharecropping, forced into sharecropping, those kind of things. Perhaps maybe the wages or something like that. There's things like, is it in this period? Am I right in thinking it's like the Thibodeau massacre, which was to do with sharecropping? I think that's in that period, so you can maybe talk about that as well. Yeah, let's have a look here. All right, sorry, I'm just kind of working through some questions here. Yeah, Luce, you can definitely talk about the FEPC. Yeah, that's good. Do you think it's so? Here we go. So I will get into some of these kind of like questions on what I think is going to come up in just a minute. I just wanted to kind of answer some questions first. So, do you think it's most likely that depth 1, 2, or 3 come up? Going on the past few years, and I'm going to put up some information here. Let me just do this now. I'll put this together on depth. Oh gosh, I don't know how to move my thing there. Sorry, I don't know if it's on the bottom right hand side. You can't quite see that. I hadn't prepared for the little picture of me there to be covering those two. Anyway, I can tell you what it is. So last year, the source question was topic 4. The depth topics were 3 and 5. In 2022, the source question was topic 3, and it was 1 and 4. The depth topics, and then in 2021, it was topic 1 source question, topics 2 and 5 for the depth topic. So topic 2 hasn't come up for a while as a source question. For example, topic 1 hasn't come up for a while. Topic 5 hasn't come up. So for sources at 1, 2, and 5, but obviously revise everything, be prepared for everything. And for the depth essay questions, 1, 2, and 4, maybe something like that. So we'll maybe go through that in more detail. Let's have a look. So, can you make up statistics? No, don't make up statistics. Examiners will probably check, so I wouldn't make it up. Thanks, Lily. That's very kind. That's very kind. I can't believe Edwin isn't here either, Morvin. I think hopefully he'll join at some point. Okay, let's have a look. Liv is asking a question about this one. Supreme Court ruling, Pless versus Ferguson, most damaging. So yeah, with that one, that question is basically the same as the other topic 2 kind of obstacle questions. So it's paragraph 1, you could either do a whole paragraph on Plessy, or you could broaden it out and say Plessy was similar to the other Supreme Court cases, and then talk about the other obstacles. So it's just like a kind of classic obstacle questions. Um, yeah. So I hope that's okay. Um, let's have a look. Maribs, and sorry if that's if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, your name. Sorry about that. But I if they asked a question on kind of positives of that Jim Crow period, it would be, I mean, it would be shocking, because no historian in the world is ever going to argue that civil rights improved in that period. Okay, I really think that would be a real. I mean, it's not very kind of historically kind of accurate. So hopefully you can see that there a bit better. Um, yeah, I hope that kind of answers that one. Um, so let's have a look. Any more questions? So I'm just having a look here. Lily saying, "Is it feasible to learn the entire course in a day?" I don't think it's feasible to learn the entire course in a day, but here is what I think you should do. This is what I think you should do for the and hopefully you can write this down, because honestly, this is, I think, what you should do, and I think you've got time to do this for the depth topics. I think you should organize the evidence socially, politically, and economically. So for every topic, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, have social, political, and economic, and have evidence as if you're kind of planning an essay for that time period, with paragraph 1 social, paragraph 2 political, paragraph 3 economic. Yeah, make sure you've got that. Then the next thing is do what I call motivating factors for each topic. So what are the things that are driving change? And think of, there's probably 3 or 4 things. So for example, in topic 4, in the I Have a Dream, the kind of classic civil rights movement period of 54 to 68, you're going to think about the civil rights movement, you're going to think about the government, and you could break that down into maybe Lyndon Johnson or Supreme Court, or put it all together. And then maybe something like the media could be, or Martin Luther King, maybe just kind of on his own as a factor. So motivating factors, social, political, economic, and finally obstacles for each topic. If you do that, if you organize the evidence from each topic into those 3 ways, so social, political, economic, motivating factors, and obstacles, and then for the breadth topics, organize the evidence into kind of early, middle, late, and turning points, and do all the potential turning points. That's what I would do if you haven't got good, had a chance to do good revision yet. That's what I would say. Between now and the exam, you've got time to do that, and then use that to plan all the past questions. I think you've got time to do that. So hopefully that's useful. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. I can see at the bottom, Edwin's joined. Amazing. It's we're all happy. Let's have a look. Significance of the slaughterhouse cases. So good question, Samuel. So, slaughterhouse cases, it's really to do with, actually, Sparkle Unicorns just kind of answered it probably better than I can there. It's essentially to do with states' rights, isn't it? Yeah, it's about states' rights. So it's kind of sets a precedent. That's the key thing with the slaughterhouse cases. It sets a precedent that the federal government is kind of giving states the power, to kind of oversee civil rights. Yeah, that's what I would kind of say there. So I hope that's okay. Um, let's have a look. Uh, Yeah, so Luca's asking a good question. Black activism for Jim Crow's in the textbook, but not on the specification. It's not on the specification, and I actually thought it was, because it was so kind of like, it was such a big part of the textbook. I think it could come up as a source, like there was the Ida B. Wells source in 2017. I don't think you could get asked a depth essay on black activism in the Jim Crow period. It's not on the specification. So to me, that means I don't think they could ask that type of question. So I hope that's clear, Luca. Good question. Let's have a look. No worries about being late, Edwin. It's fine, as long as you spell my name right. It's okay. Thanks, Lily, for the positive words. So I will keep on looking at the looking at the questions coming in, but I'm just going to go through a few things now on this kind of presentation that I've put together, and just go through what hasn't kind of come up. So I'm just going to kind of talk through this. Please ask any questions if anything isn't clear. And yeah, hopefully it'll be helpful at just helping you, ensure you've covered everything you need to cover. So in terms of the past questions, as I said before, in terms of the source question, we haven't had a topic 5 source question for a while. We haven't had a topic 2 source question for a while. We haven't had topic 1 source question for a little while either. In terms of the depth questions, so section B of the exam, there hasn't been a topic 2 essay question for a while. I guess it was 2021. There hasn't been a topic, a kind of maybe a topic 4 kind of status question, like a kind of social that you'd answer, kind of social, political, economic, or something more a narrower topic 4 question. What I was wondering, I was looking at the specification before, and I was just looking at what kind of hasn't come up, and I was wondering if there could be a kind of question on something um something like just like individuals, like how far do you agree that Martin Luther King was the most um important individual in the advancement of civil rights? And then you could do like, if it is just individuals, because the individuals on the specification are um, Earl Warren, Martin Luther King, and Lyndon Johnson. So I wonder if you could almost do a paragraph on each of those. That could, I guess, you could talk about JFK as well. If you wanted to, that kind of thing. But kind of individuals, or yeah, Sparkle Unicorn. I think you should do these revision sessions. You've got it. You're absolutely spot on. There could be a question that kind of that kind of covers both topic 1 and 2, in the sense of like asking something about like how far do you agree that all the gains made during Reconstruction were lost during the Jim Crow period. That kind of thing. So you're comparing, and then you just do social, political, economic, and then within each one you'd kind of compare, kind of both periods, or the extent to which civil rights was reduced or declined. Oh yeah, Thurgood Marshall as well as an individual. Absolutely, you could talk about Thurgood Marshall's good because you've got the Brown decision, and you've got him being appointed as the first Black Supreme Court justice by Lyndon Johnson in 1967. So that's a really good one. And Supreme Court could come up as a motivating factor. How far do you agree that Supreme Court was the most significant reason for the advancement of sorry, I'm just reading it, of civil rights. So that's what I think in terms of like the source questions and the depth questions. So I hope that's okay. For the source questions, the key to remember in terms of exam technique is the structure. Just really, really just follow the structure, quote, inference, own knowledge, judgment. Just make sure that you do that for each inquiry, and then make sure that you discuss provenance. One thing that, marking the exams last year, the civil rights paper, I was actually struck by the amount of people that didn't do evaluation of provenance. So please make sure that you get that in there. Make sure that you're evaluating the provenance of the source. Okay, let's have a look at in terms of the breadth questions, what's come up. And then what I'll do after I've done this is go back to the specification and just highlight some things that haven't kind of ever come up that you probably should make sure that you've revised. So there's been some kind of similarity. Some things have come up more than once on this. And some things, haven't obviously come up at all. So kind of To Kill a Mockingbird has come up a couple of times as a turning point. Last year, the question was like film being the most important medium. So you'd kind of compare film to literature to TV. So it could be a turning point question again, because it wasn't last year. Or, could it be something just on literature maybe, although 2022 it was just on novels. Specifically, if we look at the specification, Things that haven't come up. I mean, I think something that's quite significant that hasn't come up is Birth of a Nation has never come up as the focus of the question. Um, Uncle Tom's Cabin has never come up. So that's what I kind of that's what I kind of think you should maybe ensure you've got good knowledge on those. And the key tip for the breadth questions, I'll talk about geography in a second, is plan out potentially, just be prepared that anything on the specification, any of the named works, any of the books, the films, or the TV shows could be potential turning points. So have a kind of paragraph ready for each of them. If it's not a turning point question, a really useful way to structure it is kind of early, middle, and late. Generally, for the breadth topics, that's quite a useful approach. Unless it's like a comparison, like it was last year, comparing film to literature. Um, so that kind of thing. Let's have a look. In terms of the change in geography stuff, if we look at the questions that have come up, so we have had turning points questions. We had turning point question last year. And remember, with changing geography, just remember to focus on what the exact wording of the question is. So think about, if it's talking about settlement or migration, that's what you're talking about. That's what you need to link to. If it's segregation, make sure you're focusing on segregation and not more broadly on kind of, on changing geography as a whole. Remember, for changing geography, it can be segregation, migration, or kind of racial tensions. They're the kind of 3 points I think that you need to be ready for. If it's changing geography as a whole, then you can talk about all three. So think about the other potential turning points that haven't come up. There's been nothing on, for example, on the 1920s. Specific things that are mentioned, Harlem, for example, hasn't come up. White exodus to the suburbs, that kind of thing hasn't come up, as a kind of turning point. So just go to the specification and compare the specification to the past questions, and then kind of highlight what hasn't come up and make sure you've got some detailed notes on that. If it is a turning points question, obviously do it as a turning point. Make sure that you link back to the turning point in question in every paragraph. Do a comparison. If it's something asking you to compare, across the period, then obviously early, middle, late works well. So a couple of years ago, it was push versus pull, and early, middle, late worked really well for that. So Evie, good question about topic 3 as a source question. It could do, but it has been a source question twice already. Topic 3, it could do again. It could do, but I think just be, yeah. I mean, be prepared for topic 3. Definitely, revise it. But I think it could be, something else this year. I feel like it's something else's turn to come up. It's been a while since the other ones have come up. What points would you advise for Mississippi Burning? Liv, that is a good question. I'm happy for other people to jump in here and kind of help out a little bit. For Mississippi Burning, I mean, so with every work on the specification, whether it's a book, a film, or TV, what you've got to know is the context that it was produced. So for Mississippi Burning, if it's in 1988, isn't it? Let's have a look. 1988, yeah. So for Mississippi Burning, you've got to think about what's the context. So this is kind of post civil rights movement, Reagan. You've got the drift back south. You could talk about that. So that's the context in which it was made. Does it say anything about that context? Does it highlight anything about the kind of issues that Black Americans were facing in 1988 by going back to what was happening in 1964? Mississippi Burning's a tricky one because I'm not sure how much it's doing that. How much is it actually talking about what's going on in the 80s? Can we make any kind of parallels there? I think the portrayal, it was portraying the civil rights movement. Maybe it's coming at it from a kind of post civil rights period, increasing. Maybe you could talk about like increasing de facto segregation, and maybe that's why it was made in the 80s, that kind of thing. Did it change attitudes? That's the other thing you need to know about these things. I don't think Mississippi Burning did. I don't know if anybody wants to jump in there. Everybody's quiet on Mississippi Burning. Can anybody got anything else they want to say? um, about um, Mississippi Burning. I can't. That's basically it. I mean, you need to know what it was about, when it was made. Did it reflect the time period? Yeah, it was mainly about the deaths of 3 civil rights activists as part of that Mississippi Freedom Summer in 1964. Was it to do with? Was it a reflection of the time period in the 80s where there was increasing de facto segregation, kind of Reaganomics, welfare cuts? Yeah, was it linked to that? Possibly shows the brutality of the KKK. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Focus on 2 white FBI agents rather than the black activists. Yeah, shows. Yeah, so shape views negatively. It's not massively. It's not as impactful as something as the really powerful ones, like Birth of a Nation, obviously, which was negative. White savior story, yeah, that comes up, doesn't it? That comes up a lot. That's a useful thing to remember. That comes up a lot with The Help as well, doesn't it? And yeah, so I think that's good. Um, Good. Any other questions? Anybody got anything else they want to ask about before I kind of go into the specification in a bit more detail? Um, yeah. So Tama, we went through that before, and I think it's pretty much certain to be a choice of two, rather than rather than like it's going to be both on topic 6 or both on 7. Um, yeah, Liv, I think that's a really good point. Reflects attitudes rather than change his attitudes. I think I don't. I mean, if people want to disagree, that's great, but I don't think Mississippi Burning really changed people's attitudes. It was maybe a reminder of those issues, rather than, I don't think people were. Yeah, I don't think it really changed things drastically. Like I think some of the, Uncle Tom's Cabin, uh, Birth of a Nation, To Kill a Mockingbird to some extent, In the Heat of the Night, these things I think are more roots. I think these things do have a really significant impact, don't they? Widespread impact on kind of attitudes. Right. Please keep on asking away if there's any other questions. I'm just going to go through the specification a little bit, and just highlight some things that kind of haven't kind of come up before. Really, the one that I focused on, we mentioned it a little bit before actually, is there's quite a lot in topic 4 that kind of hasn't come up. Um, Specifically the kind of individuals or this divisions point. I mean, divisions came up as a question, as a kind of obstacle question, which was broad, the kind of broader divisions. But could there be a question perhaps on the most significant reason for the divisions? Perhaps could that specifically come up as a more narrow kind of question on divisions? I'll see if I can make that a little bit big. Could something more specifically just on divisions come up perhaps? And then you could talk about the different kind of causes, different reasons for increasing divisions, perhaps. As I said, the individuals, mentioning specific individuals, the role of Lyndon Johnson, could that be a factor? Yeah, Liv, I'll talk about divisions a little bit. So, could there be a question like, how far do you agree, Martin Luther King's stance on the Vietnam War was the most significant reason for increasing divisions within the movement? Where you get a question just on divisions. So you could talk about um, King's stance on the Vietnam War, perhaps, or you could talk about, Sparkle Unicorns got it again. So you could talk about, ideology, You could also talk about goals as well, and or focus might be better. So kind of ideology, comparing, Martin Luther King to Malcolm X, kind of like self-defense versus kind of like um, peaceful and non-violent. The idea of kind of Black Power and the Black Panthers as a contrast to kind of Martin Luther King's kind of like integration, with whites, that kind of thing. Yeah, Snick and Core. Um, This is amazing. No, Liv, don't tell Sparkle Unicorn off. This is amazing. I'm very grateful that somebody's typing this stuff. It's good. No, please keep on helping. This is amazing. Yeah, so Stokely Carmichael, Snick and Core, so those ideological divisions, that would maybe be a good paragraph heading, wouldn't it? The willingness to work with whites, that kind of thing. I think that could be a point, couldn't it? Ideology or willingness to work with whites. Goals or focus could be another. And then I don't know, then you can maybe go into one of these more specific ones if it was like stance on the Vietnam War or something like that. I don't know. But kind of you could potentially get something on that. Maybe I'm kind of overthinking that there. Yes, so that's a big one. Was there anything else? Can anybody see anything else that hasn't come up? I'm just trying to think if there's anything. Yes, the other one, the New Deal, that hasn't come up. Eleanor Roosevelt and voting patterns has come up. So don't jump the gun. It's on my mug. I don't know if you can see that. I got that a couple of years ago. This is my mug with it's actually got all the people from the courses that Spike Lee, John Ogilvy, somebody got me this. I didn't make it myself, honestly. Somebody got me this. A student or some students got it for me. Anyway, so topic 3, let me make this a bit smaller, sorry, so you can see. So the last kind of points on topic 3 are the work of Eleanor Roosevelt and the impact on voting patterns. That has never come up. So that could be something to focus on. Yeah, Liv, that sounds good. That sounds good. Weakness of opponents. You could talk about that helped Obama throughout the campaign, perhaps. You could you talk about that? Or yeah, Jack Ryan, that would be a better one. Yeah, Jack Ryan and Alan Keyes. They are the specific ones, I think, to focus on. Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. Right. Anybody got any other questions? Let me have a look. Anything on exam technique? I feel like I've kind of gone through what I was planning to go through. Has anybody got any other questions that you want? Anything on technique or structure? The other thing to say, I might have mentioned this before, but for the breadth questions, make sure that you cover 75% of the period in question, right? So make sure that you try and get as much coverage as possible. Yeah, I think that that's really important. So try and cover, like I said, early, middle, late when you're actually when you're planning your essays. Yeah, try and do that. Anything else that people want to ask? Let's have a look. What would you suggest for this question? Civil rights case 1883 should the Kansas. Oof. That's a tricky question, isn't it? Civil rights cases should the gains in. Let's have a look. What could we say for this one? Were short-lived. I mean, you'd have to do it social, political, economic, wouldn't you? You'd have to do that way. And you would probably discuss how the civil. Yeah, I'm thinking. Okay, having thought about it now, I think it'd be okay. You talk about how the civil rights case of 1883 paved the way for Jim Crow and the other Supreme Court cases. So then it would be that kind of comparison, to show how the civil rights kind of like declined in that Jim Crow period. On first glance, I was like, that looks really hard, but actually, I think that's okay. I think that's okay. Yeah, I think you'd say it paved the way. Yeah. So yeah, let's have a look. Where are we? some tricky questions that could come up for. Oh, sorry, I've missed one. Rana has asked. Let me just have a look at this. Sorry, I'm getting there. What's the best technique for all essays in order to ensure I have time to do all 3 paragraphs? Well, in terms of technique, in the exam, make sure you plan it first. Don't try and think of the paragraphs like as you're writing it. Make sure you plan them all first. Take 5 minutes to plan. Think of the question types, and if we put this up, put this up on here, so far, for the depth topics, they're either status questions, which are kind of social, political, economic, motivating factor questions, which is like why, was this the most important factor in the advancement of civil rights, or obstacle questions. So if you kind of plan those out, hopefully you'll be in a good place, but definitely plan them out before, and just keep an eye on the clock. That's key. Some tricky questions that could come up for topic 7, Evie, good question. So if we just have a look at what I mean, I think we find that Mississippi burning, if that was the turning point, that would be quite tricky to have to write a kind of paragraph on that. Could it be? I mean, I don't know if they do this. If they asked you to compare, a couple of things, I think that would be a bit mean if they said, was Birth of a Nation or In the Heat of the Night the most significant film, something like that. But they could, but I think that'd be a bit mean, especially considering the breadth of the topic. It's supposed to be breadth. So there was a question somewhere in a textbook somewhere, wasn't it? That was kind of like, did literature show a continual progression in terms of attitudes towards Black Americans, or portrayal, sorry, across the periods? So this idea of like continual progression, again, I'd probably do that early, middle, late, and just talk about the progression within each of those periods, and then in the conclusion weigh it all up. But yeah, so far, topic 7, the kind of breadth, fiction and film topics seem quite kind of formulaic. Let's have a look here. Where are we? Let's have a look. Sorry, I'm just having a look. Oh gosh, let's have a look. I'm trying to get to the questions. Could you talk about Booker T as an obstacle? Booker T. Washington as an obstacle. It's a good question. In terms of Booker T. Washington kind of accommodating the Jim Crow laws. Potentially, I suppose you could say that, Black Americans themselves, Black American leaders themselves were accommodating to Jim Crow, but then a counterpoint would be that potentially being a kind of pragmatic response. So potentially, yeah, potentially. Yeah, potentially. Let's have a look. Anything else? Any other questions? I can see some people talking about hockey or something in the chat. I can't quite. Let's have a look. Anything? Any other questions on the? I'm trying to just read through these. Has anybody got any other questions? Anything else that people want to talk about? So just in terms of the, I think I saw somebody ask a question. Sorry, let's have a look here. Has anybody got the breadth questions? Here we go. Sorry, here's one. I knew there was something that I'd kind of missed. And somebody said, what's the best way to structure breadth questions? For the breadth question, if you do chronological structure to do 75%, is it worth putting the question focus a little in each paragraph, then have its own paragraph in the chronology? I'm not quite sure what you mean. I mean, if I would only do a kind of chronological structure if it's not a turning points question, basically. If it's a turning points question, I'd do my paragraphs as the different turning points and make sure I choose turning points from across the whole time period. So yeah, I think hopefully that answers the question, Johnny, about the kind of the structure. I would do, if it's turning points, I'd do turning points. If it's something else, I'd think early, middle, late is a good one. Push and pull, if it's push and pull, I'd do early, middle, late. Let's have a look. When does the merch come out? Yeah, I'm going to make an important announcement. No, I'm not. I'm not. I think I can't imagine there's a big market out there. But thanks for tuning in. Um, what are some important things to know about Obama's life before 2006? So I think you could talk about his background, kind of stuff. You know, the Harvard Law Review, his community organizing in Chicago. If it's let's have a look here. 2004 um, Democratic National Convention speech is probably the most important, I would say. Dreams from My Father as well, publication of that. I hope that's okay, Luca. Let me know if there's anything else you specifically, uh, if there's something specific that you want to know, but hopefully that's okay. Luca, let me know if there's anything else you were kind of thinking about. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oh, it seems like there's some kind of like beef going on in the chat. Let's keep it positive, folks. Could you do a paragraph on pull and paragraph on push? You could, Susie, but I think early, middle, late, comparing them is a better way of doing it, because then you get that coverage and you're comparing them throughout more. So yeah, I think I would say I don't know if that would come up, because it has come up already. So I don't know if it would come up again. Let's have a look. Let's have a look here. What geography points are there from 1980 onwards? Good question. We've got I think you can talk about that statistic. Somebody will tell me if I'm wrong here. What was it? 50 in 2010, was it? 57% of Black Americans were in the South. So that's that statistic on the population, the migration. Also, that you could talk about the LA riots in 1992 is a useful one to remember as an example of kind of like inner city issues. Anything else from 1980s onwards? I'll have a little think, but I think, oh yeah, and then obviously all the stuff on like why the South became more attractive for Black Americans to move there, like the Rust Belt in the North compared to the Sun Belt in the South. Those kind of things. I hope that's okay. Eliza, we've gone through that. I think it's probably going to be both. There's going to be one on each, I think. Okay, Luce, good question. That's such a kind of classic question. You'd surely be happy if that came up. First World War, key turning point. So you have to cover the whole period. So I would probably do, it depends. If you're going to do 3 paragraphs, I would do paragraph 1, First World War, paragraph 2, maybe the early period, late 19th century, paragraph 3, late period. And then you probably, or if you could get away with 4 paragraphs, if you could do 4, obviously the second Great Migration as well would be really important. Or you could tag that into the paragraph on the First World War and show the First World War paved the way for the Great Migration, the second Great Migration. I hope that's okay. Let's have a look. What else? Let's have a look. What's happening here? What are people arguing about? Let's have a look. It's calm. Stay calm. Morven, you're not cooked. You're not cooked for the exam. I don't quite know what that means, but I assume it's not a good thing. But don't worry. You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. The most important TV films to revise. So I would say for that, you've got to know all of them on the specification. I was talking about that before, that you could potentially get a question with any of them as the focus of the question. For me, well, why don't we put our ideas in the chat? What do we think are the most impactful Because you say films and TV, so there's only 2 TV shows on there, isn't there? Roots and The Wire. What would we say? What would we say the most significant? And if we include works of literature in that, what would people say are the most significant ones? I'll put it up to the chat. I don't know. What would you say most significant? I think you can do a poll. I haven't ever done that. That would be. I should have thought of that. What people saying? So let's have a look here. The Help, Hannah. I don't know if that's quite a controversial one. Milo as well saying The Help. Interesting. So there's a lot on Birth of a Nation, right? So Birth of a Nation, in terms of impact, I think without a doubt, To Kill a Mockingbird is obviously really significant. Had a big impact. Roots as well. I think in terms of TV, Roots is the most significant one, isn't it? Because it's only Roots and The Wire that were on there for TV. Let's have a look. Beloved is, yeah. I mean, I think Beloved, in terms of showing a from the Black American experience, Black American portrayal. Let's have a look. Would you say we should probably do one from early, middle, and late period for literature and geography? If it's not a turning point question, or if it's a turning point question, George, then yeah, make sure you pick a range. So kind of Uncle Tom's Cabin, I think that is, if it's a literature question, it's probably good to always talk about Uncle Tom's Cabin, isn't it? Because that's the early one. And then it's probably always good, if it's a literature question, to talk about something like Beloved or The Help, because it's towards the end of the period. Yeah, amazing. Any other questions that people have got? Anything else that you want to kind of ask just while we're on here? Would there ever be a question just on TV? That would be a real curveball. I can't imagine many people would do that. If it was asking you to compare Roots to The Wire, I'd be very surprised. I think that would be really, really tricky. I would be very surprised. I'd be very surprised. So I would say it's highly unlikely. But if it is, you've always got the other option. So remember that you've always got the other option. If you get a really narrow question, don't let it kind of, get to you. Just do the other one. Right. Anything else that people want to ask? Anything else that you want to, let's have a look. Do you have to know context? Yeah, Lily. Yeah, know the context. I think that's really, really important. So in terms of the context for TV, think about what's going on at the time, and then the extent to which the TV portrayal really does reflect the context. Yeah. In terms of kind of predictions, I'm always kind of wary of using that word, but what I did, Eliza, is just kind of go through what has come up and what hasn't come up for a while. So it's not like I'm not saying specific wording of questions, because I want to make sure everybody, revises everything. But in terms of the source questions, kind of topic 2, topic 5 haven't come up for a while. What else did we say? Kind of topic 4 maybe as an essay question. Topic 2 is an essay. Topic 1 is a essay. That kind of thing. Let's have a look. What would be the context for The Wire? So I think we are. What could we say? I think we're at the point where like de facto segregation is entrenched. Kind of socioeconomic inequality. Kind of pre-Obama, Hurricane Katrina, that kind of thing you can maybe talk about, that kind of that, as an example of the kind of inequality and the lack of kind of government intervention, perhaps. Let's have a look. What else? Could you go through how you'd answer source questions? Yeah, so source questions, just remember paragraph 1, inferences and own knowledge, and then a judgment on the value of the source for inquiry 1. Paragraph 2, you do the same for inquiry 2. So inferences, own knowledge, judgment for inquiry 2. And then third paragraph on provenance of the source for both inquiries. I've got a video on that, Ella, so I hope that's okay. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Anything else? Okay. Anything else that people want to anything else people want to say? Thanks, Edwin. Appreciate that. Amazing. What a legend. Let's have a look. Anybody got any other questions? Or I think that's probably it. But thank you so much for all joining. Best of luck to everybody with paper 3. And obviously you've got a little while, or a day or so before. So there's loads of videos on all the civil rights topics. So you can check those out, and the exam technique stuff. So have a look at those. And I'll stick around just for another minute or so. If anybody's got any other questions you want to just ask right at the end. But otherwise, thanks so much for coming along. And I really appreciate all the input. I hope everybody's on good terms now. Let's end on a positive note. So good luck to everybody for paper 3. And thanks so much for watching the videos and coming along to the live session. And yeah, any students who want to, any of my students are at the school that I teach at who want to come in, you can come in tomorrow and see me. I'm teaching most of the day, but lunchtime or something like that. Okay, thanks so much to everybody. I really appreciate it, and good luck with paper 3. Thank you so much. Yes, all the best, everyone. Goodbye and good luck. Goodbye, everyone.